Well, hello everyone. Here, show you right here is the Love Stars big job right here, and basically talking about for what is it considered a big job, and we can also be talking about a full-time job, and if anybody wonders, is that that a full-time job, of course, a full-time job is going to be a big job because knowing about the amount of hours that you're going to be working per week or so, and what they'll have you assign you for do any sorts of job, but the way I positioned this illustration, Photoshop work right here. You have right here is for midnight, and you have right here is for planet Earth right here. For planet Earth along with the satellite, and then for the moon right here, and along with planet Mars right here, and then the sun. And so the way we think about this right here is that for if we've thought about this to where that whenever you're going to be looking at at planet Earth from space, and then from whenever you're going to be looking at the stars, from Earth. So it's like, say, that you're going to be from sitting from being looking down on Earth and then looking up at the sky. That you may think that those are really that they don't really sound too much like two separate things, but I guess maybe if they are, this right here will be example right here of like a view from space, and then this right here will be a view from Earth. And but you have right here is this I'm sure most of us have seen this already before from the last video I posted, but talk about big jobs, and so how do we describe big jobs? And I think it is that, especially if it's going to be maybe related to a contract. And you have right here is this painting right here, talk about for best friends right here. But for how we describe big jobs, and with any source of job, that whenever you get a job that pays a decent amount, that we're talking about for our work that matters. Some contracts that ask for you to sign them. And then you have right here is the jobs, the work of the duty that is assigned to the employee for their time, that they are present, working on the courses, and as well as the database. A job may be more than just the work than originally described, for expected for the reasons of knowing about the job. Of course, does. The job, of course, does not just go by the salary earned, but on the other hand, it also goes by, it's based on the project, and about for the big job. So this question right here that I came up with right here talks about for how do we handle 5 or more years of work. So let's just say that if anybody were to if I were to be starting a job, and then the thing is, somebody were to ask me as to where that really that how do you stand working a job? And I say that that a job is not just what you call saying, hey, I got a job, or hey, I got a new job now. Hey, I got a job. Basically, that the whole purpose about this job is also talking about the number of things you call the duties and responsibilities that you would need to perform, and some of it you may not even like too much at all. Some of it that you might say that are you absolutely going to love it? Just because that maybe it pays a decent amount, or maybe if it's gives you something to do. Could be a number of reasons, but if anybody were to warrant to where that, like for any contracts that basically that the purpose of why I'm doing this video, of course, is also talking about for jobs, and for jobs. So if somebody were to invite you to come to a meeting or some sort, and then they want to talk to you about the job, and the thing is that really, do you think that the job is right for you, and for what all you gotta do? But still, that there might be some people that may warrant to where that whenever you first got hired onto a job, it could have been temporarily, or that whenever you first started working a job, that maybe you did not have very much experience, and with that very little experience, that you were able to stay on to the job for 5 years or more, for 5 or 10 years. And so somebody's going to maybe come up to you and ask you about, how did you stand working there? How did you stand handling this job, for 5 years. And it seems like, that well, we may have heard that before. Besides, for Love Stars, so that heard that about, for you have right there is the moon right here, but we may have heard that to where that it seems like it requires a bond. And what I mean by bond is to where it's something that you that you pretty much have to feel more comfortable with it, and just knowing about what what you try to get adjusted to. So that working whenever you're going to be working a job, there's going to be some requirements, and there's going to be something about the job that you absolutely like, and it just does not bother you at all. And I guess it seems like that's what most jobs are looking for, is to where something that does not bother you at all, but maybe that's somebody else that may say that, well, yeah, it irritates me, or it really stresses me out, and it really aggravates me just knowing about what I gotta do. But really, if anybody were to say that this person here, that there may be couples out there, maybe loved ones out there, that may say that they're on the job together. They work the process together, and then they do this stuff together. They perform the responsibilities together, and talk about for business reasons, but for how do we describe about a big job? And I put my name on it right there, so that way tell people that that based on for anything about related to designing work, because that goes to where that with the paintings. And then so let's just say at this painting right here, this painting that you can get on the Curios site, but on the Curios Art Shop, but let's just say this was an example right here of something that I used just maybe a few tools and maybe a few colors just to go ahead and draw this, But then let's just say that somebody also wanted to promote this painting right here, this illustration painting, and maybe post it up in an advertisement. Maybe it could also be for business reasons, or maybe for just advertising, or maybe for another website, for like what you call for how co-workers meet each other, or something like that. Maybe for a dating site. I can say that painting like this, if anybody were to say that that maybe that they would be used pretty good for like maybe a dating site, to where that whenever you meet that you're best friends there for a while until you become co-workers or something. But still, that how do we describe big jobs? And big jobs, and talk about promotion and talk about training, but ways of how we can describe a big job. And it seems like that a big job, though, that ways of how we describe big jobs. And I usually look at, like I said before, about as toward the amount of work that you're given assigned to within a week. So let's just say within about maybe 4 days, that they give you so much work to do, and that can really put a lot of stress on anybody. Especially though I know sometimes, like with me though, that you may think that you can handle, you have everything under control with the job, and as well as that I think I can handle this, and I've done this before. And then by the time you start working, it seems like it's a lot harder than what it really is. And if anybody will warrant to where that why is it that cases like that come up to where that you think that you have everything under control, and that you think that you know what you're doing, but then that there might be some moments to where that you're trying to understand a little bit more about what you gotta do, but still that there's really the difference between for what you can assume or what you can figure out, or just that in order to be able to move on to the next step, it seems like that really, do you just have to ask the question, or just think as to where that try and just experiment, but still that there's going to be a job that needs to be done a certain way. But if this was right here was supposed to be like a contract right here, and like I showed everybody here, they say with the contract they talk about for Love Stars, and but the whole purpose about this job right here that we can see right here is that way I place this right here is talk about for big jobs. And how many of us could maybe impress the world just by saying this to her that, one thing that maybe you can do to help improve and change the world, huh? And it seems like I mentioned before, to where if anybody were asked that question to her, that, hey, that, well, how really, what can you do and how can you improve something to the world whenever the world is much bigger than you are, and thinking about, for how much that you're able to do as well. But let's just say this to where that with any source of job, if you're going to be working a job for 5 years, and let's just say that whenever you start out working a job, that there may have been some things that you just did not have during the time whenever you first started nearly 5 years ago. And one of those, like anybody say, besides medical insurance or anything like that, but whenever you first start working a job, that maybe the technology that you just didn't have during the time, and that maybe that the type of training that you didn't have during the time. But let's just say that whenever you first started working a job, that the first thing that maybe that you were in charge of was mainly about testing, about diagnosis of software programs, or maybe about printing. I guess this right here will be a print. So let's just say that whenever you first start working a job, that you started working for a printing business or something like that, doing printing work, and that you were in charge of making sure that the alignment and the measurements were all right and correctly, and as well as the color, the type of the ways that the printer and how it's printing off those documents. So let's just say that with the way that how the printer is working, and that's from between the actual desk jet printer and compared to the office jet printer, laser jet printers. You combine these different printers, and then maybe you get different results. But still, that we may think that that source of job should not take very long. And but let's just say that if you're talking about trying to understand the printer itself, and then that the amount of the type of technology that's in that printer, to where it allows the color to be able to print off this amount of work onto on a printing paper, or if it's anything about document spreadsheet or something like that. But talk about right here with the big job, that first of all, like for Clean Earth, a lot of things are going electronically, so that if you're going to be printing off anything, and they might say that every now and then that they want to go ahead and print off documents, and something that you can still get a paper copy of or something like that. But let's just say that if it was related to maybe advertisements or something like that. But nowadays they got all that electronic stuff going even by mobile, to where at the time that the printing and electronic printing and I know that they would have something like that even on mobile, that it would not even be on paper, that it would be visible from your phone, that all you gotta do is just it may require you to download a certain file or some sort. But that if anybody wanted to wear that really, I'm like, that job shouldn't be that hard to do, because really all you gotta do is just on your phone, that you just go to if there's like a certain link that you gotta go to, just to be able to download the ad or something like that. But still, for how do we call the way we call big jobs though, and with a big job, that if you're going to be working a big job, and working these, if you're going to be working a job, and let's just say if it is a big job, that whenever you first started, that there was only so many responsibilities and only so many duties, until within 3 years later, until you got a promotion, and you wind up asking yourself that I do one or two as to where that why I took the job, because of how difficult it is, and maybe about all what that you gotta do, and yeah, if you got to go through maybe a checklist, or maybe if you got to check up on some stuff, and maybe the number of things that you got to do while you're on the job as well. And so you're like thinking about is to where that, yeah, a job is not just a crossword puzzle to where you can just write your best friends and maybe spell best friends. It's like you find the word best friends, forever or something like that on a crossword puzzle. That having a job, having a job is not just about talking about it, of course. And so the way we think about having a job is also about thinking as to where that for what you gotta do and how you are able to handle it, and then for what you learned about it, and then so far as how other people, how other clients know more about your work. So it seems like that's basically what it's all about, is how other people know your work, especially if it's going to be a promotion, but or any sorts of raising salary or anything like that. But still, though, that how do we describe a big job? And let's just say that with the job, though, that the amount of work, the amount of progress that you gain while you're working a job, and whenever you first started, that maybe that you only had so much, that was before maybe that you had that certain travel, that level, certain level of skill or something like that. But let's just say if it's been 5 years since you were originally hired, and people start asking you about how do you stand, how did you hold on to a job for 5 years? Because it's like some people that may have only been with the job only for about maybe 4 months, and then they thought about as to where maybe the job's not right for them. So if anybody were to maybe ask that question to her, if anybody were to ask as to her that whenever you first started a job, that you kept thinking about it's not going to work out, because it's a lot harder than what you thought it was. And besides talking about the tough and the tough get going, but let's just say that one of the suggestions I can maybe make too is to where that try not to feel offended too much about a job, because whenever you're going to be working a job, people are going to be telling you about what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, and that no matter if it hurts your feelings or not, but then they're going to tell you about what needs to be done, and then they're going to and I know like a lot of jobs, they say if a number of other examples that I could also mention too, but still that one of those also examples would be is to where about job experience. But really, that I usually look at is to where like the type of bond I'm talking about would be is to where that for what you can handle on the job, and for anything about is to where that you're going to go ahead and do what it takes just to help improve. Like try to get the job done. You're not going to get too upset because somebody yelled at you. You're not going to try to get too upset over the fact because that something that went wrong. Something wasn't as easy as you thought. But still, that whenever we are going to be working a job, especially if it's going to be a full-time job, or as I say, even if you're only part-time, that you may work a lot of hours or so, even if you're part-time, and you've been working this job for over 5 years, and other people, they may ask you as to where that whenever they get hired onto that similar job, and then they're going to ask you, how did you hang on to that job? How do you stand it after 5 years? And sometimes people may say that you just did, you hung in there, and then you got the training, and you worked hard, and the basic requirements about having a job is to where that we know that having a job is not just about what you call attending and just about being there and just saying that, oh yeah, just flip through a few pages and then the job's done, but still that we're talking about, especially if it's going to maybe be a sales jobs or any sorts of job, that you're like thinking is to where that you're so used to applying for a number of job applications, and at the time that one or two, or whenever you finally get hired onto a job, and then you're thinking about is to where, oh yeah, business reasons, and by the time somebody, as I say, that they kind of whenever you meet somebody in particular, but besides like for invitation, but so far as for a big job though, this right here don't seem like a big job. And I guess I can use this as an example right here of something that's the total opposite, because this don't seem like a real big job, because I guess you say it's really not, because that's just a drawing of me right there. If I were to be had a few activity books right there, but let's just say if it was a big job, but we just don't see it, right? Well, we just don't see that, this big job. We don't see this big job. And one of the reasons maybe why we don't see the big job is because we see me just sitting at the desk right here with a few of these books right here, and just being like, okay, you just have them out just because that you found them, or maybe because that you were just looking through them, or if you want to write something down on one of those books, activity books, there's a few stickers or whichever notepads or something like that in those booklets. But that right there, these examples of these activity books right here, of course, that if they were an example right here of a job, and it seems like something like that is only going to maybe take you 15-20 minutes to just get through it, maybe a half an hour, just if you gotta maybe fill out a few forms, and then fill out a checklist, and as well as anything else about the database or anything like that you gotta do. So whenever I first started my first job, I can remember that, for really, what is considered a piece of cake? and I guess it's basically that, for really, what is considered a piece of cake? How many stars have you drawn and thinking as to that they're going to be easy to draw, and say you for knowing about what's going to be easy to be able to handle, huh? But still, that for what on earth do we consider between easy and hard? And whenever something is considered to be very complicated and very frustrating and very hard, that's whenever that you feel like saying this to her, that you're just going to go ahead and tell anybody that I don't want the job, and you can give somebody. But let's just say there's a point to where that they say that the job is right for you, but you just got to think of that right moment. You got to think of that right moment of time to say is to her that job is perfect for you, but maybe you just don't see it yet. Maybe it just hasn't happened yet. So it seems like at the time that for if it's going to be any sort of relationship or some sort, that with a lot of these big jobs, that for what we describe for a big job, that for how much energy that needs to be provided just to be able to perform the needs for this job. And I know that if anybody were toward it, that they would probably have gone through the experience toward it whenever they get hired onto a job, that it's a lot harder than what they thought. And then there's been a couple of times that they thought about quitting, and they were thinking in their minds that, I'm getting tired of this. I'm about to resign, or I'm about to quit this job. But still, that you try hanging on to the job as long as you can, and maybe that they would suggest that to go and hang on to the job as long as you can, because that just think about it to where that with the job that a number of things that maybe you're just not used to. A number of things that you're just trying to get adjusted to. A number of things that maybe you just don't know about the job. It may be quite a bit used to. And so if anybody were wanting to, that number of things in the whole world that you're just maybe not used to yet. And that you're just like wanting to, how are you going to be able to manage that between whenever you get the job, and let's just say that there's a number of things that you're trying to get adjusted to also. The quickest and easiest way of how to get adjusted to it. And it seems like one of those could be is toward that, the type of bond toward for how the people, the clients know your work as well, and then they know that you're pretty confident on working this job. The job's perfectly for you, and knowing about anybody that you may meet as a later on point also. But also I can maybe think about is toward it for how other clients know you work, especially, and then by midnight. So this is how I usually, I say this almost all the time about that, to where that no matter how stressful the job's going to be, just think about how much progress that you're able to succeed in within the 24 hours period. or maybe within a week period. So if anybody say that after about maybe 30 days, after about 30 days or so, about how is the job going. So it seems like the number of things that you're looking for about the job within about maybe 30 days. It pays well, but still, that there's been a couple of times, maybe within that first 10 days, that the job is not like a club to where you can just go in there and have a few drinks and maybe play a game of pool or maybe go bowling or whichever you call it. I'm like, how many of us would maybe think that even if you were to go bowling every night on a job, that would be considered like what you call a club or anything like that. There are some jobs, and I know that there are some jobs that they say, especially on the weekends, that they're going to maybe have like a party or event to where that people that you work with, and they're going to maybe invite you to go to maybe a place to where you're going to have a party, especially for the holidays, get to know everybody on the job, that sort of stuff. But still, that for how we consider the big jobs, and if anybody say, yeah, that's the management's job. If you're going to be taking management, that's going to be a big job. Compared to the low income, if it's between man and woman, and for manager's job. So I heard that a lot of times too, and if anybody were to say, if you really believe about all that either, it's like that. A manager, being a job as manager is a pretty big job too. But for what we call a big job, that the type of job I'm talking about would be is toward that the stuff that it may not work all the way that you like for it to work, and then maybe not everything that you gotta do is going to come from your own opinion. So whenever you first started working a job, you may be used to, okay, I think this looks good like this, or I think that looks good like that, with the Photoshop working by the time the final printout, and then by the time that you work with somebody else on a similar thing, and then they're going to probably tell you that, that they want their advertisements, if this is supposed to be like an advertisement for like, for like maybe a National Geographic, or maybe for a Science Space magazine or something like that, for a Time magazine, talk about for space, talk about astronomy or anything like that, and then they're going to maybe suggest that you use some other wording or phrase or something like that, just for that display. And so it's like saying is toward that for how picky people need to be about that they want to go ahead and put together a magazine, but then they want this right here to use a lot more touch up, and they ask you to put in some more lettering, and then maybe rearrange a few things, change a few things, especially on the files. And let's just say that the files had to be recreated or maybe transferred to a zip file and all that other stuff, but we may have heard about. But anyway, but talk about for big jobs though, for what we consider a big job, and really that I also look at as toward the amount of work in progress that's given to you from whenever you were first hired on the job, that they told you about a number of things that you really were not looking forward to by the time you got the job. So just think about if you're so used to going from application to application, applying to these different jobs, and maybe you sign a contract or something like that and saying that for 1 year or so to go ahead and go to these job sites and maybe to spend certain training or something, but. And let's just say that if it is really to something that's say it's going to be, it's good for 8 years, and if you can handle that. So I have my name right here as if it was advertised to say for people that know me very well, and anyway I say that for knowing about Matthew, and so it seems like a lot of times that if you're going to be working a job and people know you very well to where that they're going to be calling your name quite a bit often, and they ask you to do something for them, or maybe if they ask you to take care of something, or something came up, and then they're going to say that, sometimes it feels a little bit like that. People are going to be calling your name. They're going to be pointing their finger at you. The people are going to be pointing their finger at you and saying that they want to try to get your attention somehow. But anyway, but talk about for best friends though. That whenever Yeah, I'm sure that that's happened to a lot of us, to where that whenever we're going to be working a job, you're going to be best friends with somebody, but then you may not agree on everything, and you may argue at times, and then you may talk to each other a little bit like you're arguing, but really about how to show the true love relationship about is to where that for how long did you get along with all the other employees and co-workers. And so that's just a thing that about how we describe a big job. That it's basically a job to where that knowing that you just cannot just think about just you and think about to where that for what you have, but knowing about for the company and then for what you're doing. That also got to think about the work, and then plus anything else that you would be responsible for also. And so it just seems like is to where that for how we describe is to where that between easy and hard. That if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it, huh? I'm like, yeah, that's just a thing. That anything that you put your mind up to, huh? And it seems like you hear that almost all the time. Anything that you put your mind up for, but really, I'm like, what's the truth of the matter is, for knowing about for how that you're able to adjust and bond with the skill, and really that. There are jobs that you have been able to hang on to, that you have been able to keep and show some really good progress with. So not all jobs, not all jobs are like are going to be like that to where you're stuck with it. Well, you gotta do what I say, or anything like that. But for what we call big jobs, that there are some jobs out there that sometimes you just gotta learn about the fact of the matter is to where that whenever they see something that needs your attention, and they see something that needs to be done within a certain time, that you just gotta learn about as to where are you going to be able to take care of it, are you going to be able to fix it no problem at all, or is it going to take a little bit longer, just to try to arrange for what you can do on that. And I just really think that that the whole truth of the matter is to where that the amount of work in progress, that if they see at least 3 or 4 weeks of good progress, and they might know that a little bit more about for who you are and how you do it, and I know if anybody will want to work that after about maybe 5 years of working a job, or maybe 8 years of after working the job and then the skills, that people may they may warrant to where after they're hired, maybe after 5 weeks, and then they're like warrant to where how did you stand working that job? What better answer really is there to give other than the fact about that you worked hard? I guess that's really the best thing maybe anybody could say, is that whenever you're going to be working a job, that you worked hard. You hung in there. You got adjusted to what you had to do, and you worked hard. You put in a lot of hard work. Just to be able to keep the job, and after 5 years. That they say is to where that for if you did a real good job, and see if that's really for what people for what anybody would ask for, about if it's going to be a love relationship, and maybe by the time you retire also, that knowing about the special guidance that you have in love and support. Talk about for love stars, and so how do we know about if these love stars, if they're going to be real or not? Anybody say, yeah, real love stars. It's all about for anything that you do and anything that you experience with, and really that you worked hard just to be able to perform the job, and even though that you think that maybe a year was enough, and a year was just too much stress, and really how do we get relieved from all the stress and anxiety from a job, and sometimes that you just really gotta think about and I know I do this all the time whenever I'm at work. Sometimes you just gotta think positively about something that you're looking forward to. Something that you think about just to get your mind off the stress and off the anxiety. And sometimes that if you're thinking about is towards something that you'll look forward to doing after you get off work, and maybe something that you're looking forward to getting in the future as well. Something that you think about, that you want to improve your education, and something, just something to think about. That's usually what I say too. It's something that you look forward to. don't think about the way I think. Don't think 1 second about the job. The job, if it gets too stressful, then it think is toward that ways of how to calm down and how to get adjusted to where that something goes wrong and knowing about how to handle that. But still, that's the best way I can say about it with a lot of jobs. That between the tough and the tough get going, that for how to adjust it, and if anybody will warrant toward it, not everything is going to be a straight line, of course, and not everything's going to go very smoothly. But you worked hard, and that's usually, I would say, the best thing you say. That knowing about for how we can be able to perform a good job and then show great progress is that you worked hard, and really that for how from how somebody is trained, and then from how the progress that they made while they were on the job, and that's basically what it is that from how you handle the job, and then for what you tell, what you're able to teach other people and everybody else about what you do as well. So it seems like to where that after 5 years of working a job, that but it's like even if it's maybe 8 or maybe 10 years of after working a job, that people may ask you is toward it, how did you stand it? How did you handle it? But still, that there might be many of answers as well. But I guess the best thing you can probably say is toward it. Yep, you worked hard. You did the job. You did the job, and then you did the best you could, and so that's just the best way I think about it too, is toward it showing great progress and knowing about for how other people know your work especially, but know your work very well. But other than that, talk about for the love stars. Have right here is for the couples right here, if they were to be looking from down on Earth and then looking at Earth right here from space. And so the way I align that right there is knowing about for Roy. I'm like, what can you do to impress the world, huh? What can you do to impress the world? And really, what can you really do to show the world that you're willing to make a difference, especially on your work? And knowing about, that for who you meet. And so I say for real love stars, huh? Real love stars, about the relationship, knowing about the trust and honesty, and knowing about that this is what I learned. And then knowing about the love and companionship that we give to one another. But other than that, talk about, say, for showing great progress. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.